The Seahawks won the Super Bowl, and now it's time for baseball. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekly episode of the Seattle Baseline Podcast. My name is Julian Smith, and I'm with Alex Hong. The Seahawks, they went, they shoved, and they did it against the Patriots. They got revenge. No more interception. No more, you should have handed it off to beast mode. No more. JSN, Rashid Shaheed, everybody, Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker got the MVP. That's great. And Jason Myers, underrated, got robbed of the MVP. I love you, Kenneth Walker. Should have been Jason Myers. Alex, how are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, they had the parade on Wednesday, so it was a few days ago, and lots of people went. I was thinking about going, but I ended up not going. But it was like also a pain to get there. Like Seattle has like the Link station, and that was like packed. According to some people I talked to, like it was like a disaster to get downtown. And I mean, a lot of people showed up. I think it was like 850,000 people, so it is pretty crazy, right? So, and also Seahawks, they did dominate, so they definitely did deserve to have that parade. And, there hasn't been a parade in at least like 5, 6 years. I think the Sounders, the last time they won it, I think that was the last time a Seattle team won. And then, so it has been a while. Obviously, the Mariners have had zero parades, but yeah, it's good to have another parade, I guess. And it was a really good season by the Seahawks. So yeah, it was a fun Super Bowl to watch. One of my friends is from Boston, and I definitely made fun of him after the result of that Super Bowl.
Yeah. And if you recall, the first, like, during the offseason before this season, we traded DK Metcalf for the second round pick. Everybody was talking about how the Seahawks were rebuilding and they're going to suck for another year. Mike McDonald doesn't know what he's doing, everything. And then now the Seahawks won. And it's like, well, here you have it. The Seahawks are your Super Bowl champions against the hated Patriots. That's the part that like I love most is that we beat the Patriots because that is like straight up in your face. Go get him. We're gonna build a dynasty because next year Seahawks are gonna win it again. But this year is gonna be the best season for the Seahawks because the Seahawks or not the Seahawks, the Seattle sports because the Seahawks just won the Super Bowl and the Mariners are about to win the World Series. I want to talk to you about Julio Rodriguez because that I Julio Rodriguez is the key part. If Julio Rodriguez plays well, if Julio Rodriguez is an MVP, the Mariners are probably bound for a World Series. So, Alex, I want to ask you, what do you think is the key part of Julio Rodriguez's success next season?
Yeah, I mean, just to talk about it, right? The Mariners have Cal Raleigh, who was a borderline, he was second place in the MVP voting last year, and then you have Julio Rodriguez, who was sixth last year, right? So we have two. Well, I know Julio was never going to win it last year, but we have two perennial MVP candidates, right, on team. So that's like incredible. Like usually a team like that does really, really well, and the Mariners did do really, really well last year. So what could step it up? Because Julio Rodriguez is one of those guys who is he's a very interesting guy, I'd say. A lot of people who follow baseball know who he is, right? They know he's very good, right? They know what he's good at. But Julio has yet to reach one of those levels of like, he's like borderline the best player in the league after his rookie year, where he won Rookie of the Year, he had an amazing year, right? Everyone, the hype was there with Julio. I remember this. In his second year, the hype was there. Then he had that slow start, and everyone was like, "Oh, this might be a sophomore slump." And then the second half of the year, played well, and then everyone's like, "Okay, third year, Julio Rodriguez, here we go." And then the same thing happened, right? The slow start, and then he got it back together, and the same thing happened again this year. So he's kind of reached that same cycle of where he has yet to pull a full season together where he's pulled an amazing season because that second half of those years, right, for the past 3 years have been amazing. Like if he played like that the entire season, he beat like a borderline MVP. He beat like an MVP, true MVP candidate, but it has yet to happen, right? So what Mariners need to figure out, and Julio especially, how can he become that type of player? Because he is super duper talented. Everyone thinks he has that potential. That's what they saw after his rookie year. It's just how can that be achieved?
Yeah. And Julio Rodriguez, as you just mentioned, has so much talent. He has the speed, he has the home run power, he has a pretty good contacting ability. His second half stats, if you just looked at his second half stats in the last 3 or 4 years, you would think Julio Rodriguez is the MVP. With his defense and his offense combined, he beats Aaron Judge with those stats. And then all of a sudden, well, you look at the first half of the season, he's below average, not even average. He is below average. He's batting 200 with maybe 3 home runs. That's not MVP. That's not even, that's, you'd expect more from a player like JP Crawford, who's clearly not one of those MVP caliber guys, than what Julio Rodriguez does in the first half. And so Julio Rodriguez clearly needs to step it up. He needs to figure out what he's doing wrong. Is it the cold? Is it transitioning from Arizona to Seattle? Is it the jitters? There's got to be a reason. And throughout the season, he seems to make swing changes that then benefit him for the rest of the season, and then he regresses again. And so I'm I'm hoping for Julio Rodriguez to step it up this season. I firmly believe that 2026 is the season where Julio Rodriguez starts to hit the corner and run, because last season he his power numbers were up in the first half of the season. So Julio Rodriguez is on an up train. And so I'm excited to see him.
Yeah, I mean, Julio is just he's a player that everyone wants, right? His defense is excellent. And that's always a constant, right? Even when he's struggling on offense, we know he'll play good defense out there. He's fast, he can steal bases, right? He can hit for power. He's not as good as drawing walks, and he does have a strikeout problem at times, but I mean, if you just look at his stats, especially when he's playing well, it's unbelievable. It's like 1,000 OPS. Like in the last two, actually the last 3 years, 2 and 3 years ago, I remember Julio would just have that one month where he's hitting like 1,100 OPS or something completely ridiculous, where he's like the best player, and then he ends up pretty good the rest of the year, right? So it's always been the same thing where he starts out slow, and you mentioned maybe he makes some adjustments mid-year, right? And then thing is, it's difficult for us to identify what's wrong because it just looks like when he comes out there sometimes at the start of the year, he just looks kind of lost, or he's just like swinging at too many bad pitches. And it's just like, it's difficult for me to come up with a way of or a solution on how to fix that, right? But it is something that definitely needs to be fixed because there are times last year in early part of the year where Julio is borderline like unplayable. Now he's playable because his defense, but like on offense, it's just like a disaster out there. It's like he has no idea what he's doing. I remember we talked about this on the podcast. He was a below average player heading into like July, which is unacceptable.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And you were just mentioning like Julio Rodriguez's flaws. One thing that he changed in 2025 that I thought was a really good catch was the swing plane. And before his swing, he used to have the bat more upright, and then now he has a little bit more tilted towards himself. It creates a plane where now he's more able to hit the ball faster, quicker, because you can swing as fast as you want, but if you're not quick enough to hit the ball, then that's a problem. That's
Mhm.
why, for example, players like Luis Arias, he's quick. He's not fast, so he doesn't have home run power, but he's quick, and that's the difference. Ichiro, when he was with the Mariners, he was a quick hitter. And if he wanted to hit the home run, he could change his swing to make it a pull home run swing. But most of the time, he was playing that ground ball because he was quick to the ball. And that's something that Julio Rodriguez seemed to figure out in the later part of the season, the second half of the season. is changing the changing the swing or changing the setup a tiny bit to make it quicker with that home run power that he has. So that was the interesting switch I thought he made during the season last year, and I hope he continues to do that because that's something that Victor Robles did in his first season with the Mariners, and it worked out great. So I'm hoping it works for Julio.
It's something I did notice looking at his stats. And at least this isn't the trend always, but at least in the last 2 years, Julio's been way better hitting away from T-Mobile Park than hitting in Seattle. So I do find that a little interesting, but that still doesn't erase the overall trend where, I mean, it's not that he's only struggling when he's playing in Seattle at the beginning of the year. He's struggling all throughout, right? So I mean, there are some factors like that. Julio does a pretty good job in not having too many problems in splits percentage wise, right? So he can hit both, right? Lefties and righties, which is usually very good. But what he's not hitting at all, he's not hitting the lefties or righties at all, you know. He's either hitting both of them or hitting none of them, right? So it's kind of a thing like that. But the more I think about Julio is he is one of our star players. He is one of the best players on our team, right? And he is one of the leaders on our team. He like if you think of Seattle Mariners, the one of the first players you think of is Julio Rodriguez. So we need him to play very, very well. And you talked about how at the beginning, right? How can Julio become an MVP candidate? The easy answer is he just plays well throughout, right? But that's a little, there's a lot of good players out there, right? If you look at like the MVP conversation, it usually starts with Aaron Judge, Bobby Witt Jr. Last year was Cal Raleigh, right? And if you look at them, right, every single MLB player like tends to slump at least a little bit, right? But it's the way you recover from a slump, right? Even Cal Raleigh last year, he slumped. Aaron Judge, even with his amazing year last year, right? And if you think about Aaron Judge, remember he started the year off as the best player in like MLB history, right? He was hitting like, oh my God, I remember he had like he was batting 400 or something completely ridiculous. And then he started to fall off, right? He fell off big time, right? He was back to like, I don't know, if his average dropped all the way down to like 300 or 330 or so, and then it got all the way back up to like 360. So he managed to, come back, right? It's just you gotta have the ability to be able to, okay, I'm in a slump, right? I gotta get out of like the slump as quickly as possible. I think that's something Aaron Judge does very well, right? Is why he has such many good years. And even with Cal Raleigh, he had that little bit of extended slump, which might not have been a slump. It might have just been the first part of the year was just an aberration, right? But then Cal Raleigh eventually at the end of the year, I remember he got it back together, right? So do you think Julio could achieve something like this?
Well, Julio Rodriguez, when it comes to it's only the offense with Julio Rodriguez because clearly his defense is Gold Glove caliber. He was second place in Gold Glove voting because he was a really good defender. Clearly, he can run, he can throw. Everything's great on the defensive side. I have nothing to say about him there. But Julio Rodriguez just simply needs to start the season not hitting sub 200. That's it. Julio Rodriguez needs to go out there after spring training and light the ball on fire with not just his home runs, but he should hit more doubles. Why is he not hitting more doubles? This is a guy that can run bases, and he's not just home runs. Cal Raleigh is just home runs. Eugenio Suarez is just home runs. Julio Rodriguez can run. Why is this guy not sprinting for doubles? Why is he not able to get the ball in the air into shallow center field and running to first? Why is he always ground balls? That's the question. With Julio Rodriguez, it's not just does he have the power in the start of the year? Is it cold? Like all this stuff's there, but at the end of the day, it comes down to why is he not able to hit doubles? And that's because he's not getting good contact. And clearly, that's where I think the quick swing change, the approach that he has now, that's going to work out perfectly for him. If he can do what he did in the second half of 2025, specifically with that swing change, then Julio Rodriguez is going to be just fine in 2026. I have full confidence. I will say that with full confidence.
Yeah, also might be more of a confidence thing. I think Julio, I think he needs to be more confident in himself. He knows he's very good, right? Everyone knows he's good, but sometimes with these players, he gets into their head. I know we talked about Gilbert, right? And maybe he has some confidence issues at times, but sometimes with Julio, I feel like I just see him at times be look like an completely incompetent hitter, right? There are a lot of players who have the swing and miss problem or the chasing out of the zone. But I see Julio start chasing stuff that like pitches that hit the dirt, which is like completely unacceptable. And this is, I think, one of the most frustrating things about Julio, right? When he does cut his strikeouts though, when he stops chasing, he like draws more walks, right? And then they force the pitchers to hit more in the zone, right? Then he starts mashing. That's one of the big deals and the big limitations with Julio is his swinging and miss issue outside the zone. So I don't know. Maybe I feel like sometimes he has more of a patient approach, right? Sometimes I think this is a problem that a lot of players, MLB players have on really bad teams where they are treated like they are the savior, right? That they need to
Mm,
be the player that plays really well. And I think, we had Jared Kelenic a few years ago. At the time, the Mariners were terrible, like terrible, terrible. They had nobody. It was basically Jared Kelenic was basically looked at as a guy who needs to save the team. And I think that was one of the reasons why he failed is because he kept acting like, oh, if I don't do anything here, we're never going to win, right? Julio does not need to worry about that, especially after a year like this. We have Cal Raleigh, we have a lot of good players, a really good pitching staff. He doesn't have to do everything. So if that gets into his head, like, okay, I could just play straight up, how I normally play. I could hold off some pitches. If there's a pitch that's kind of going outside the zone, but then Julio needs to think, oh, I don't need to swing at this. I don't need to turn every single, pitch to a home run, right? So I think that's one of the benefits that Julio is playing with, that we have a good team. The star player doesn't need to be the star player. And some players do really well like that, right? Aaron Judge, he's playing in New York, right? Very difficult. Like he has to deal with everything, right? He is the face of the franchise, and he is literally doing everything, right, for the Yankees. Without Aaron Judge, that team is like a disaster. But Julio has the benefit of not needing to play like that, and that could definitely play into his strengths.
yeah, you were just talking about it. Cal Raleigh's there. Brendan Donovan having that addition is really big. The You now have JP Crawford still there. He's a veteran. And you have Randy Arozarena, who's been there, done that. Julio Rodriguez has a lot of players that he can count on to be on his side and perform well. So I'm excited to see Julio Rodriguez this year. The mental stuff that you were talking about and the swing changes that I was talking about, I think it all mixes up. Julio Rodriguez, one of these coming years, he will have one of the MVP caliber seasons. 2026, I hope, is the one. I believe that Julio Rodriguez in 2026 is going to be one of the MVP contenders with the changes that he's made, with the mental that he's gone through, going all the way to the ALCS. He did that with Cal Raleigh, with this Mariners squad. He did that. And so all that confidence, all those changes, all throughout the years, everything that Julio Rodriguez has gone through, it's going to start at spring training. It's going to go to WBC, and the Mariners are going to win the World Series because of Julio Rodriguez.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. Julio, he is going to be one of the key things I think we look for, especially at the beginning of the year and maybe at spring training to see how he does. Now, spring training won't tell us that much information because he is like an experienced player. That's more of something that you look at for like a spring training for like the younger guys, the guys in the minors, right, to see how they're playing. But yeah, well, I want to really see how Julio's approach is at the beginning of the year, and then maybe we could compare it to previous years and see if there's like a correlation in any case. But yeah, that's all I got to say.
100%. Hey, thank you everyone for tuning in. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our beautiful faces on YouTube. Check out our Instagram. And as always, go Mariners.
Go Mariners.